I'm just going to add on to your point. I think that's really important that we don't pressure classes or individuals to fundraise the most. I work with kindergarten children, and they feel really stressed out when they're pressured, and they come to me, they feel sad. I'm like, you know what, this is not mandatory. So you really have to remember that point, because the littlest ones are feeling the pressure from these fundraising things. So they feel like they're bad people for farm if they don't reach a goal that an adult has set for them. And so it's really important that we remember that.
Absolutely.
Thank you for reading out of Regulation 612, because I think that school councils in the 22 years since they were established have forgotten that.
Mm-hmm.
And so school councils were established, as you said, for people to teach achievement. Fundraising isn't parent engagement. Fundraising is parent contact. Parent engagement, family engagement, all the research shows is families engaging in learning. And that family engagement is one of the top, depending on the research you read, one of the top or top 2 or top 4 things that affect student achievement. And it's family engagement in the home. It's not family engagement in the school. So when we start as school councils, when we start spending a lot of our time worrying about fundraising, we're getting away from what our mandate is, and we're getting away from family engagement is. So if you accept that premise, then any school in Ontario, whether it's urban or rural, whether it's high income, low income, middle income, can strive to improve family engagement, and they can do it with hardly any money. They can easily do it with the $500 that you mentioned. And what it starts with, and I think you mentioned surveying, it starts with surveying your parents and asking them what do they need so that they can support their child's learning. What don't they understand? What do they need to know? Do they need to know about literacy? Do they need to know about numeracy? Do they need to know how to read to their kid? Do they need to know what questions to ask them? And then as a school council, developing those programs and those training sessions for your parents to support the family engagement. And then fundraising for those programs. And all of the research tells us that when the engagement opportunities that we offer our parents are meaningful to them, then they will engage. So if you are saying we want to hold a series of workshops to help teach parents how to support numeracy at home, and we need $3,000 to do that, and we're going to do it through this, and this, or just this, then parents will engage in that, and they will be more willing to give the money because they then see a reason for doing it. Because now you're doing it for them, you're doing it for the most important thing in their life, their child. You're not doing it for the school.
And it's interesting you raise that because some school councils feel quite the opposite, right? And a lot of parents do too. I don't want to fundraise for parent programming. I want to support the kids. I want something for the kids. But it's a really great point that we have to also think about, how are we spending that money? Are we supporting the parents? That's really good.
Well, we have to, sorry, if I can just, because what I'll say to the schools is, tell me how getting a new scoreboard in your gym is going to help help raise student achievement in your school.
Yeah.
It's not, and it's
let's go for baskets, come on!
it's completely contrary to all of the research.
Yeah.
So just, I'm a parent on parent council. I'm not the chair, but I'm relatively new to the council thing, like 2 years in. So I'm just
got a few years out of you yet.
I'm just trying to wrap my head around the purpose of the council, and one of the goals that I'm the secretary that I wanted to work on this year was developing like a mission statement or a vision for the council, but I'm totally confused because when I started going to council meetings, I totally felt they were like, the old executive was very cliquey, and the people who went, like I didn't have access to what was happening. But the thing that was really a barrier to participation was the anger that the parents brought to the meetings, and I found it really upsetting. And I would get home, my husband would be like, please stop going to those meetings.
I heard that before.
Yeah, and so the fundraising is like an easy thing, and it's like a place that anyone can go, and like most of our events are about community engagement, so there's not really exclusion to people who can't participate, because if they're actually more inclusive, I find, because people who can't financially contribute can come and they volunteer, and we have a lot of families who do that. But the barrier is like the politics is very exclusionary, and so when you show up and there's all these parents and all these that don't know each other and they're super angry because there's 37 kids in their grade 6 class, people don't come back to the next meeting. And so trying to find that balance of like, what is our purpose? Because we'll often say as the council, like, our purpose is not to get a better teacher for your kid's grade 4 class. We can't do that. But what, you know, and we're constantly saying, well, what can we do? And
so when they raised again, the better teacher, Kathy Philpott, she's here, and she's a wonderful school counselor, and she talks about school councils as it's not about personnel and it's not personal. So please don't bring your report card, your child's report card to school council. You're just going to plan that they got to see. And also, please don't talk about how horrible Mrs. Smith is as a teacher. That's not the role of school council. But that can happen, right? So, and that's a game. But it's part of the ugliness of school councils is we have to get that under control. We also, I mean, we're veering way off what we're supposed to be talking about here. But it's one of the challenges that school councils have to address is, yes, we have to handle those hard issues, but we have to make sure it's not a barrier to people being involved, right? So, yes, you might have a really good debate about class size in the school. That is an issue that parents may be concerned about. What we don't want is it to be, well, the principal just hates us all, or, you know, and becoming ugly, because that really does. I don't want to be involved in that. I'm a volunteer here, right? So it's a really fine line to walk.
Jack, you're taking away Mike's job.
Sue, did you want to speak for a minute?
Oh, well, no, I was going to make one point, and I'll wait till the end. I just wanted to say, the question about who does fundraising benefit, and someone said kids, some people said parents. I just want to put out there that some fundraising activities benefit businesses more than anybody else, nonprofit businesses. And so that might be something to think about when doing your fundraising policies in terms of like, that's just something I just wanted to put out there. I see a lot of things like, we'll get to keep 40% of the profit. And I always think, where's the other 60% going? Like, we're getting all this together, you know, and they're just something else for consideration. But my bad.
Yes.
Okay, so I was on the school council chair. I was secretary for 2 years, and then we did pizza lunch all the time, okay? And that's how we kind of bonded and got together. When I became chair, the first thing I did was, I'm like, I'm not doing any more of that. We're gonna do fundraising, F-U-N, raising. Because I think what happened at the school was that everybody kind of got tired. They were like, okay, you know what, here's $20 for the rest of the school year for all 4 pizza lunches that you guys are gonna do, because we don't wanna keep doing this. Then we got, sometimes, I don't know who was giving this money, but they were giving Canadian Tire money for the pizza. So then we're like, okay, you know what's going on? Is somebody not being able to afford it? Is there some issue? So we created a little box for Canadian Tire money, and it supplied our skating program. So we got helmets and sticks and stuff. So which was really cool. So the kids, whoever put that Canadian Tire money, they got to see their money in another place, but use it for the appropriate reason. But I think the mental switch is when you go from fundraising to fundraising, that is it. That's when it happens. And that's what we teach our kids, that you can do enough with 500 that you could do with 5,000. And if you have the manpower and the passion, that same 500 can take you to the 5,000.
Did you have any suggestions for how to kind of balance things? I know, like, someone from our board that I carpooled with, we're in completely different demographic parts of not huge city, but nonetheless, like, it really is phenomenal where they're raising money, you know, some kids have mittens, and we're raising money for a scoreboard, you know, like, you know. So, is there did you have suggestions as to how to kind of, besides, say, adopting a sister school or something, partnering?
So we don't encourage that. The problem with twinning schools or partnering schools like that, there's a little bit of judgment in there, and we don't, and it's also sort of entrenching charity as supporting the school system, right? So really what you want to be doing as much as possible is take that fundraising money and use it to advocate for better funding for all public schools. And that's how we started. Really, genuinely, that is now, as Christine explained, that's how we started. Because it's like, wait a minute, what happens in the schools that can't fundraise for math textbooks, right? The problem with when we start to entrench it, then it's like, oh, we don't have to worry about it because all these schools are doing a great job of sharing their resources and dividing it all up. Some boards are talking about moving towards that. It's a really hard issue. I have also had schools say, or parents say, not my school, thankfully, but it was a teacher at our school who talked about her school council, where they did try to do that, and the parents' response was, sadly, I'm fundraising for my own kids, not for somebody else's kids. We're not going to fundraise, right? That put an end to it. They chose not to do it. So it can actually be a really hard thing to overcome.
We have
I don't really have the answer.
I was a part of a program once that was kind of similar, but it was really targeted. I don't also know how I feel about this, but it was like for a friend, and it was kind of twin schools, but they were fundraising specifically for like nutrition programs. So what they did is on like Thursdays every week, they brought in fruit, and then they like had buddies at the other school, and their fruit would go to the class in the other school, and then that would be their nutrition, like their snack in the other school, because the school that I worked at was in a low socioeconomic area, and they weren't able to have very nutritious snacks, and we had a breakfast program. And so, yeah, I guess that's like, it's still kind of the same like feeling of I'm going to help you, but at the same time, it was not possible in that school to raise the money for the nutrition program that they needed. And it was something like the kids understood what they were doing rather than the parents just giving money. I don't know.
Well, that's what I was saying, like, we weren't talking about raising money for the other school, but, we had discussed at our meeting, one of the things was, a consignment sale, but no one's willing to actually take the consignment sale on to organize it. They just want to drop the stuff off and someone else. So anyway, then we were discussing, having the stuff, people bringing the stuff so it could be donated to a school where there is a need. And it's like the stuff, not actual money. That's what I was wondering if you. Because then the money they're fundraising would have to go, right? It could go towards other stuff. Does that make sense?
I wanted to make a general comment because we're sort of going at it, but not really, I think, sort of willing to go fully into the conversation. And that is, it's an interesting, I'm in health. So it's interesting for me to wear a health hat and then to wear an education hat. And one thing that I find is that, and it bothers me a great deal, is how much of a money conversation education has in our faces as parents, compared to health. So yes, both fundraise, there's hospital foundations, there's ways that, hospitals do big things to fundraise. But when you come into the hospital, they don't say, like, would you like to, donate to something, like, that service is provided at a somewhat standard, to be discussed, level at various hospitals, and that's not so much the case in education. We're having way too much money being talked about at every point of learning and education. You join the school, here's in a secondary, here's our activity fee. You want to go on a field trip? That's great. This is a $50 field trip. You're graduating from grading? Great. We have a $600 trip to Quebec City. Like, whoa, like that is not even fundraising. But for me, for public education, that's way too much, pushing back on people about money. And the concept that families who are tight, can, speak privately and confidentially, seriously, that's very embarrassing. So if your family could afford that, but it would cause hardship, you're not going to go. So it's just, I really think that there's a really big conversation here about money in education that we need as a society to push back on government, and say, you need to fund education. If you say these are components of learning, you need to fund this, right? This is not a parent responsibility.
The other thing we have to say, sorry, I'm just going to jump in here, is please, everybody in this room, walk out of here and say, I like paying taxes.
Right on.
Right? Instead of worrying about charity and supporting and all that kind of thing, if we all paid more taxes, I always say, I'm happy to fill out my tax form. Right? So many people, well, I don't want to pay more taxes. Well, guess what? That's what buys us a civil society. That's what actually creates equity, right? Because we could have the Gale and Weston wing in every school, just like they have the Gale and Weston wing in every hospital. Do we want that? No, of course not, right? If Gale and Weston paid a heck of a lot more taxes, all that money that he spends as a charitable organization could go to a variety of causes that are more, sorry, Dale.
But he does, but he just gets to write it off that way.
Yeah, and he also supports private schools, so.
And just tie that comment to an actionable piece of advice we had earlier, which is having this singular fundraiser. Because again, that's one opportunity where, yes, there's a chance for you to be other.
But
That's
the
better than
school's
30.
I know, but the school's already fundraised off me way before the single fundraising. So, seriously, so but in grade 8, the $600 trip to Quebec City is, not something that I'm going to contribute that much money to a single fundraiser. And so my family, we had a discussion about that, and that would have compromised something else. So so then the kids don't go, right? How does that feel like, etc.? How strong do they feel with the peer pressure? So there are a lot of poor families who don't want to have the shame of either asking or not going. So, and there's no simple way around that. That's not about being empathetic or whatever. That, from my point of view, that's a situation I don't want to have happen.
Well, I think that happens even in the healthcare system.
Yeah.
You can wait a year to see a neurologist in Huntsville, or if you can afford to drive to Toronto, you can see one in a month. You can drive to the States and see one and pay money.
And if we visit the ER in our department, we get a letter 4 weeks later asking if we'd like to donate to the hospital.
Right? So like I used to door. Yeah,
It's a natural vortex for
like full school and healthcare. You get what you pay for, unfortunately.
So, sorry, I did promise Sue I would allocate
30 seconds.
Yeah.
Sorry, because I feel like everything. So I just wanted to say, I'm Sue Wigton. I'm a faculty member at York University, associate professor, and I'm just doing an ongoing study about how people participate in school fundraising in Ontario, what influences their practice, the work that they do, the outcomes and effects. So if you'd be interested in participating over the phone or meet face-to-face in an interview, come to me. I'd love to have you. Thanks.
Great. We have time for one more question.
I was going to affirm what you were saying, and just take it to the level of symbolism, because I think that's what we're talking about when we're not using the word. I lived in America most of my life. It's kind of reversed there. The hospital feels like a real money place. The first thing they ask you when you walk in the door is how you going to pay, except in California where the law says they can't. And here, the schools are much more associated with money than I was used to in the United States. And we lose track of the fact that you want some places that are zones that are free of capitalism, for our peace of mind, for the health of children, for equal opportunity. And we need to make that explicit. We want to build a barrier around. There's a professor named Alex Molnar who's dedicated his whole career to this out of Milwaukee, to eliminating commercial influences from the school. And I'm from BC, and this problem is about the same scale there. And one thing I think about it is that it sucks up the parents' time and energy instead of them doing the lobbying and the political action that could raise the whole bar so that you didn't need all of this. So I think this